Well, at least we know what happened to the supply of spinach. Here's your look at the new Boss Fight Studio Popeye Classics, Popeye the Sailor Man. Everyone's favorite Sailor Man and his crew are finally coming to highly articulated figure form. Drawing inspiration from the classic Sagar comic strips, these figures are sure to delight all Popeye fans. These 1/12 scale figures stand between 4 and 6 inches, depending on the character. Popeye comes ready for action with spinach can for power, alternate hands, removable hat, and alternate head for your play and display needs. Before we get a closer look at Popeye the Sailor Man, I'd like to first thank the folks over at Boss Fight Studio that did provide this sample we're about to have a look at. I'm grabbing also the tape measure, and I'm keeping his hat in place for now, just because I generally think of Popeye with his hat, and with that included, you're looking at the figure standing about 4.5 inches in height, or Popeye the Sailor Man is 11.5 centimeters tall. Spinach squeezing Popeye comes in fact with a squashed can of spinach, and while it wasn't something I was able to do as a kid, I did eat my spinach all because of the Popeye cartoons told me I could grow up big and strong. I'm still waiting for that to happen. The figure, though, comes included with 2 different interchangeable heads. He comes included with a sailor hat I currently got on one of the head, and he also comes included with 6 pairs of interchangeable hands. Yes, that's a lot. As of right now, though, the figure does have gripping hands on the ends of his rather large forearms, but if you prefer punching Popeye instead, the figure comes included with punching hands. Closed fists molded nicely here in plastic. The plastic does have sort of a slickness to it, but it's a good quality of plastic that they're using for these Popeye figures. The hands are fairly easy to swap out. I'll do that more in a second. The figure also comes included with a pair of relaxed hands, if you prefer that instead. To change the hands out, let's say, for example, we want to have Popeye punching Bluto on this side. Go ahead and just simply remove the hand. It's actually quite easy just to pry the hand away from the forearm, and it pops quite easily off that way. Take then the hand you want to use, pop that back into place, and now Popeye's ready to sucker punch somebody. We all sort of know who. This hand, on the other hand, I'm actually going to keep for right now because the figure also, like I said, does come included. Let's get him to stand here with his squashed can of spinach. It's painted nicely here in silver. Of course, you've got the spinach here on the top. I would have done, though, one even better, and maybe for future release, I would love to see them actually release. Let's pick the spinach can up. I just dropped it on the floor. I would love to see them actually release a version of the spinach where it actually has the little stream of spinach that he would squeeze from one arm to his open mouth on the other side, and just sort of have like a little bridge of spinach. That would be certainly a nice touch. Careful getting too close to the cut can lid. Don't worry, it's not hard, it's not sharp plastic, but you can see it's really nicely molded. This does fit into Popeye's hands. I'm just going to remove the sailor hat for right now because I'm having a feeling it's going to fall out of his hands, falling off of his head. Popping this into his hands, though, just be careful of the lid, and Popeye then can hold the spinach can in one of his hands and ready to sucker punch someone with his other. Going back, though, to his hat, he does have a hat. It does clip onto his head, but it actually is more friction than anything else. It won't necessarily survive a blizzard test of tipping the figure upside down. You sort of have to just rest it onto Popeye's head and just hope it stays well enough in place. If you have it far enough forward, it sort of does give you the same look that he has in the cartoon. You can also have it a little further back, but then it also shows Popeye's brush cut. He does have 2 different head sculpts. Again, that's one thing we can also look at as well. This head sculpt isn't really, to be fair, the one that came included with the figure when I got him out of the packaging first. I'm going to remove the can of spinach for right now. It was technically this head sculpt, but I did want to start things first by showing you guys just sort of the more defaulted head before beelining over to the one that's more like, as you can see, he's got the open mouth on the side. That was a horrible impression of Popeye. The heads, other than that, seem to be very similar in not only the size, the way they're molded, but also the same style of hair. The hair, again, we don't normally tend to see it too often in the cartoon. Every once in a while we did, but most of the time Popeye was usually wearing a sailor's hat. But both the heads work to hold the sailor hat in place. Unfortunately, though, the one that came defaulted out of packaging, I've got a little bit of paint that's, I think, maybe just worn away. It might have also been left behind from the sailor's hat of having it on his head too often. Changing out the heads, though, simply just going to hold onto the torso and just pop the head off the ball joint. It works sort of the same way as the fist. It actually helps. First of all, if you're having any problems to get the head onto the large socket, you can always heat the head in hot water, or you can also use the hairdryer trick. Removing the heads, though, I find it's actually easy just to kind of pull it back and literally just peel it off the top of the ball joint. Then to take the head that he started with, pop that in place, I really do prefer this one, honestly, of the two. But I just, again, wanted to start with this head sculpt instead. Both of them actually do have the pipe stuck into the side of his face. They are not removable, and they are of a softer plastic. So when you are putting on the head the first time around, just be careful that you're not putting pressure against, obviously, the pipe. With this head now in place, my favorite of the two, just take the hat and put it back onto his head. But again, like, it's more friction than anything else, and repeated times of doing this, I think, again, I've got a little bit of paint on. You can already see how a little bit have been left behind. He does have, I don't know if you can see it, there's like a little spike on the end of his hair. That there is technically a hole there that if you take the spike, you can line it up to the hole provided on the inside of his hat and sort of fit it on on his head that way. But it doesn't do any better of a job of keeping the hat in place. Again, no, it won't survive tipping it upside down. Head sculpt wise, it looks just like Popeye. Again, like the plastic, I'm really happy with what they end up using. It's not a brittle at all plastic at all. Usually when it comes to boss fight releases anyways, they're using pretty good plastic, and Popeye, again, is no exception. He's got the very large forearms there. You got the anchor tattoo there on his one arm, and the other arm, again, he's got the same anchor tattoo. But it looks like this one's actually a little bit further, kind of more in the middle. This one looks like it's maybe just a little off to the side, but it's pretty close. The sailor's outfit is consisting mostly of a black top. You got a nice little painted in buttons there in yellow, and the collar piece, like in the cartoon, is nice and red with a little striping of the black here in the front. Down below, we've got the bell-bottom pants, very large-looking shoes. He does actually have articulation in the ankles, and he does have technically peg holes in the undersides of his feet, though Popeye does not come included with the display stand. I don't really think he necessarily needs a display stand either. The figure stands fine, even though he has oversized arms like this. Seriously, I could never get this result by just eating spinach alone. For the figure's articulation, going to go back to the head sculpt here, it might actually be even easier just to remove the hat for right now. Popeye's head, with the ball joint that he's given, gets actually quite a range of motion. You can move the head down that far, you can move the head that far back. Moving it obviously too far may result in popping it off the ball joint, but you can also rock the figure's head sculpt back and forth, and obviously you can rotate the head all the way around as well. For Popeye's arms, they also rotate all the way around. They seem to be on hinge joints. With his arms, they only seems to be able to be, I can only really get them a little below 90 degrees. Actually, this arm is the tighter of the two. But yeah, you can take the arms and rotate them all the way around. The figure does have a swivel. He does also have a hinge here, and while it may look quite uncomfortable to be able to bend a hinge this small, I didn't have any problems at all. It seems, again, like the plastic that they're using is really good for these figures. Hands rotate also all the way around. They are a little loose sometimes just by the way that they're pegged in place, but still again, like really large looking arms, really large looking hands. That's Popeye's MO. Upper torso is on a ball joint, so you can rotate it all the way around. The figure's legs seem to be on ball joints too, so you can get a splits for Popeye. You can also move his legs forward, move the legs back. He has only just a single hinge for his knee, but that's more than enough. You can also hinge it back and forth. You can rotate the lower leg, and Popeye does have articulation in his feet. Maybe not, though, as much as the knees and his thighs. You can only move him back and forth, just only by a little bit. And there's a little bit of ankle pivot there as well. All in all, just a great love letter to the original Popeye cartoon. I grew up loving Popeye, even again to the point where not only was I eating spinach, probably my parents were probably thanking Popeye for that, but also I think at one point they had shredded gum, similar to Big League Chew, if anybody remembers Big League Chew. And I think they had, from what I remember, one specifically for Popeye, which I was always buying. Nor the gum, nor the spinach built up the arms that he has, actually, what we get in the cartoon and actually in a figure form here. But I really like the look of Popeye. I think again, I like the accessories that they include. They didn't include, honestly, very much. 6 pairs of interchangeable hands, which is really the best of the batch. It also, again, comes included with a squashed can of spinach, which I will be obviously displaying with the figure. But certainly for future releases, I would love to see an angry version of Popeye. I would love to see Popeye with his mouth completely open. And going back to a point I mentioned earlier about the squashed can of spinach, I'd like to see a spinach where it's squashed and you sort of have, like in the cartoon, a stream of spinach that goes from the can to Popeye's, of course, open mouth. Excuse me, do you have olive oil in your cupboard? Well, if you do, you better let her out. Popeye's getting mad. Dusting off the oldies. Speaking of oldies, nothing gets older than the old classic cartoons of Popeye the Sailor Man. A staple in my household growing up. I loved watching the original cartoons and always hoped at least, that if I was eating spinach as well, Generally, though, spinach was served on my plate. I didn't have to squeeze a can in order to get it out from the can to, of course, my mouth. I think maybe it was just the way I blame it on my mother, the way that she probably prepared the spinach by just boiling and adding the butter and all the salt and stuff that she would add to it. Maybe it just diluted the effects, the power that you would get from just raw spinach by squeezing it out of the can. I don't know. Whatever it is, the routine that I was using of eating spinach on a regular basis did squat, and I certainly did not look like Popeye growing up. Certainly when it comes to also the figure releases of Popeye, we aren't just going to be stopping our routine of looking at Popeye alone. No, thanks to the folks over at Boss Fight Studio, we will be looking at in the entire line of Popeye figures in upcoming reviews. That includes Olive Oil, who, as far as I know, is not stuck in a cupboard. Let me just check. No, she's not. She's not stuck in a cupboard. But big thank you, though, to the folks over at Boss Fight Studio that did provide this sample of the Popeye Classics, Popeye the Sailor Man. If you guys enjoyed this video, want to hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing, certainly do want to stick around for more Popeye reviews. If you haven't already done so, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. And if you haven't already done so, make sure you turn on the bell notification. And of course, ... If you haven't already done so, make sure come back, please. Because of course, we are going to have a ton more videos coming your way regularly. And you don't even need Popeye peelers to peel them either in order to check out that new content. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.